My Roth IRA is 65% Nvidia. Some people think that is reckless. Some people think that is conviction. And both are possible answers. And the number alone will not tell you which one it is. Because there is a real difference between concentration you chose and concentration that happened to you. Most people sitting on a single large stock position have never stopped to ask which one they have. I'm going to walk you through 5 questions that I use on my own positions and 4 different scenarios that tell you what to do depending on where you end up. And then I'm going to run the whole thing on my own Nvidia position, including the part where the answer is not clean. So people usually ask how much is too much? 10% in one stock, 25%, or 65? Well, that question is incomplete because it ignores whether you chose it. Intentional concentration is where you did the research, you had a specific thesis, you sized the position deliberately and thought about what would change your mind. Accidental concentration usually happens one of 3 different ways. A winner compounds until you look up and it is running the whole show. Your employer pays you in stock and you hold it without deciding to own that much, or you inherit shares you never picked. Someone with 65% in one stock might be making the most disciplined decision of their investing life. Someone else with 65% might be one earnings report away from a permanent mistake. And most people are somewhere in between. They bought intentionally, but they never revisited whether the thesis still holds at the current size and price. That gray area is where the mistakes usually happen. So question 1. Do you have a thesis or do you have a feeling? A thesis is not, I think this company will do well. A thesis is, I believe Nvidia continues to dominate data center GPU infrastructure for the next several years. Because switching costs are high, the CUDA ecosystem takes years to replicate, and the companies building AI infrastructure need Nvidia more than Nvidia needs any of them. That has a mechanism, a time frame, and it is falsifiable. I can look at the world and tell whether it still holds. A feeling is AI is going to be big and Nvidia is the AI stock. Both might work in the short term. Only one tells you when to sell. If you cannot state why you own something in a way that could be proven wrong, you have hope, and hope is not a position sizing strategy. Question 2, what would break your thesis? If you have a real thesis, you should be able to name the conditions that would end it. Mine breaks if a credible competitor genuinely threatens data center GPU dominance, or if infrastructure spending reverse in a meaningful and sustained way. Now, here is the part I want to be honest about, because most people present break conditions as clean tripwires and they usually are not. Neither of my conditions arrive as an announcement. There is no morning where the news will come out and say the moat is gone. Custom silicon is the example I keep watching. The largest cloud companies are building their own chips. And that is not a hypothetical, it is actually happening today. Is that my competitor condition already triggering slowly, or is it a parallel market that never touches the merchant business? I do not know the answer to that yet. And that puts me in an uncomfortable situation, and I would rather say so than pretend my tripwire is cleaner than it is. Slow moving break conditions are the hardest kind, because you can always tell yourself if it is not significant yet. If you write break conditions, write down what evidence would count and roughly when you will check, or you will find yourself moving the line. But if you cannot write your break conditions at all, you do not have a thesis. You have a position you will hold until it scares you, and then you will sell at the worst moment. That pattern costs people more than the concentration ever does. Question 3 is, can you hold through the worst case? I put the emotional question before the math because people think emotionally first, and if you fail this one, the math really doesn't matter. 50% is the number people usually use. For a single stock in a hot sector, I think that is too gentle. Nvidia has drawn down more than that before. A single name can fall further and stay there longer than index ever will. So if your largest position dropped 60 or 70% tomorrow and sat there for 2 years, what would you actually do? Not what you should do, but what would you do? If the answer is that you would probably sell, somewhere in there, the position is too large for you. That is true even if the thesis is right. A position you cannot hold through the worst case is a position that will cost you money when the worst case arrives. The right size is the largest position you can hold through that without making any emotional decision. Question 4, what is this as a percentage of your net worth? I'm not just talking about your portfolio, but everything, every account, home equity, cash. A 65% Nvidia position inside a Roth is a completely different risk if that Roth is 10% of your net worth versus 90% of it. Same percentage, but different meaning. People say they are fine because nothing is over 20% of their brokerage account. And then you zoom out, and that account is 80% of everything they own. Question 5, what would it cost you to reduce it? This depends entirely on the account. In a Roth, there is no capital gains tax. If my thesis broke tomorrow, I could sell the whole thing at no tax cost. I want to flag the other side of that though. Zero exit cost means zero friction, and friction is not always your enemy. A taxable investor has a built-in reason to slow down and be sure. I do not. So the discipline has to come from the rules instead. In a taxable account, selling a large appreciated position triggers a real tax bill. That is not a reason never to sell, but you need the actual number before deciding. Because sometimes redirecting new contributions makes more sense than simply selling. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4 scenarios. Once you have walked through those 5 questions, you will find yourself in one of these 4 situations, and each one has a different answer. The first is the clean one. You chose the position, the thesis still holds, and the size is something you can absolutely live with. The answer here is to hold. I say that directly because a lot of people in this situation are looking for permission to keep doing what they are already doing. There is a lot of pressure to diversify. Every article says it. Every well-meaning person in your life will say it. And some of that is good advice for some people, but it is not automatically good advice for you if you have a real thesis. You know what would break it, and this is not your entire financial life. The discomfort of watching it swing is the price of the return. The second, you chose it, the thesis is intact, but it has grown larger than you intended. This is the most common one, and the answer is not to sell. The answer is to stop feeding it. Every new dollar goes somewhere else, and over time, the weight comes down on its own without actually selling because everything around it grew. That is what I do. In my Roth, 70% of every new contribution goes to VTI, 20% to my income sleeve, 10% to conviction names that are not Nvidia. The Nvidia position stays where it is. The new money goes elsewhere. The third, and this is the dangerous scenario, the position is accidental or you are no longer sure why you own it. This one concerns me because you are carrying real risk without a reason and without an exit. You have 2 options. You can build the thesis retroactively, which means actually reading the transcripts and working out what would have to be true for this to succeed and what would have to go wrong for you to leave, or you reduce it to a size you can hold without a thesis. A 3% position in a company you do not understand is a bet. A 30% position in the same company that you do not understand is a problem waiting for a catalyst. The fourth scenario is the position is large enough that if it went wrong, your actual life plans will change. That is no longer a portfolio question at this level. The tax cost of reducing matters less than the consequence of not reducing. What usually works is systemic and gradual, small regular sales, tax spread across several years. It is slower and it costs something each year. And what you are buying is turning a risk that could break you into one that cannot. Now, let me run this on myself. Intentional or accidental? Intentional. I bought during COVID with a thesis about GPU compute becoming the backbone of the next decade. Do I have a thesis? Yes, the one I laid out earlier. What breaks this thesis? Custom silicon at the large cloud companies or a sustained reversal in AI spending. And as I said, the first one is not a clean signal. It is the question that I keep coming back to, and I do not have a confident answer today. I'm watching it rather than resolving it. Next, can I hold through a 70% drawdown? Yes, I've held through significant ones before without selling. The rules exist so that when it drops, The rules decide and not my emotions. What is it as a percentage of my net worth? The Roth is a significant position, but it is not everything I own. If Nvidia went to zero tomorrow, it would definitely hurt, but it would not change my plans. That is the single biggest reason I can hold this position when someone else at the same percentage should not. Next, what is my tax cost to exit? Zero. It is in a Roth account, which, as I said, cuts both ways. So when I run it, the answer is hold. But I want you to notice something. If you run a framework on yourself and every answer comes back clean, be suspicious of the framework. Mine did not. Question 2 is still open, and I told you that. That is what it looks like when this is working properly. So the goal is never to decide whether you should own one stock or 50. It is to make sure everything you own, that there is a purpose behind it. Concentration you chose with a thesis, with break conditions, and with the tolerance to hold through the worst case is a strategy. Concentration that happened to you without any of that is a risk you have not thought through yet. So run the 5 questions, write the answers down. You will be surprised how much clearer it gets on paper. And if you want to follow what I am actually doing with my own positions in real time, that is what the paid Substack community chat is for. Every update, the moment I make it, and the reasoning behind every decision, link is in the description below.